welcome. I am Ansa from Saponify, where we magically turn oil into soap. Now today's discussion is going to be between hot process and cold process, the differences between the two and the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs and all those kind of things. So if you're new to soap making, this might just help you to decide between them, or even if you've been using one over the other and you are wondering about the other one, then I'm going to give you some information on that as well. Now there are plenty of different options on how to make soap. None of them there's not a right and a wrong way. Hot process versus cold process, the one obviously is cold, you do not apply heat, the other one you do. Now to make soap you need to react the fatty acids in your oil with the lye to create soap molecules. Now if you are using a colder process, let's rather go for colder and not cold and hot. If you are using a colder process, it's going to happen slower. The moment when you apply heat, the chemical reaction just happens faster. And there are pros and cons on all of them, just depending on what you want to do. So let's just jump right into it, and we're going to start and we're going to look at the equipment. Cold process, obviously very straightforward. If you've got a bucket and a spoon, then you can actually basically make soap. If you need the scale to weigh your stuff and so on, whatever. But there's no specialty equipment required for this. For hot process, you're going to need something to apply external heat. So you're going to use either a crock pot or a double boiler. I've got a way that I do it. For rebatching, I use hot process in a microwave. Microwaving, remember you're nuking your molecules. So you're going to lose some goodness. So that's not the preferred way, but I will leave a link in the description if you want to go and check out my microwave method. It's just when I need to rebatch something, I've lost all my patience and my love for that batch. I just nuke it, get it to soap, move on, and then I will pour all of my love and patience in the next batch again. So yeah, there's another way. Then you've got in-between methods. You get heat transfer method, you get cold process, oven process, where they use a cold process and then put the loaf of soap in the oven at 60 degrees Celsius, and then they process it with heat further on, and yeah, there are many of them. Okay, first things first. Okay, yeah, you need specialty equipment or external heat source when you do hot process. You will need electricity or gas or something like that. So there's a little bit more required to do hot process than with cold process. That's the first thing. I'm going to go down my list, otherwise I'm going to be all over the place, and we're going to make it easy for you. Okay, then safety to touch. When you make cold process soap, it's going to take around about 24 hours before all the lye has saponified and turned into soap. So there's about 24 hours before you can try and test your soap and before it's safe to touch and safe to cut, depending on what you are using. If you are making 100% tallow soap, then I usually cut it within 4 hours. But it generates a lot of heat as well by itself. So, but yeah. Normally, cold process soap, let's say it's going to take you 24 hours before you can really handle it and before you can actually taste it. With hot process soap, because you are cooking it, the moment when it cools down and it's set, you can immediately try it out, you can immediately use it. There are no unsaponified lye or unsaponified oils or unreacted lye in your hot process soap. So you can test it much faster, 24 hours. Okay, the main thing people think where the main difference comes in is that you do not have to cure hot process soap, which is so wrong. There are so much more happening during a cure than just the lye reacting with the oils. You need to get rid of extra water so that the soap crystals can form properly. There is a soap crystal structure that forms in soap during a cure as the water evaporates. It's like little building blocks just moving closer together, and yeah, cured soap, so much better. Now with cold process soap, you can actually reduce the amount of water that you use in cold process soap. So there are less water that you need to cure out of soap. Now normally for me, between 4 to 6 weeks are a good time for cold process soap. Hot process soap, you are going to use more water because some of it is going to cook out during the cure, during the cook. Some is going to cook out during the cook. Obviously, but anyhow, there's usually more water. So when you put it in your mold and you cut it, there's more water to evaporate out of your soap. So normally, for me personally, what I experience is that with hot process soap, your cure is more going to be like 6 to 8 weeks before it's really a hard soap and the crystal structure has formed there. So let's just quickly look at the specific amounts of water. In cold process soap, we usually work with 33% water to lye ratio or a 1 to 2. So it's 1 part lye, 2 parts water. With hot process soap, you're going to use a little bit more. Usually it's 25% or a 1 to 3 lye to water ratio. 1 part lye, 3 parts of water. So that is more around about, that's the main difference if you are formulating a recipe as well. The recipes are the same, you just use a little bit more water for hot process. So if you have a cold process recipe that you really love, you want to try hot process, just add a little bit more water to it and then you are good to go. Okay, the next thing is your super fat. Now that is a main difference between the two as well. With cold process soap, you're adding all your oils and fats and stuff into a container, you melt them down and then you add your lye water to it. So you cannot really choose which one of the 3 or 5 different oils or fats that you added there to become your super fat. You can even try to bring it to trace and then add an extra oil for super fat, but still some of it is going to be saponified. So you can't really control which parts of your oils are going to be saponified, which are going to be left over. Where with hot process soap, what you can do is you can, in the soap calculator, you can calculate your super fat for before cook or after cook. Now before cook, what actually it means is this soap calculator is going to distract some of the lye so that there are not enough lye to saponify all of the oils. So there are going to be some left and that's going to be your super fat. Hot process, you can tell the soap calculator, I want to super fat after the cook. Then it's actually just going to calculate how much oil you need to add afterwards. So you can start with your soap making, you bring it to trace, you do everything as you do with cold process soap. Then you're going to heat it up, you're going to start your cook, and when everything is saponified, then you add your extra oil afterwards. So you can decide, you know what, I want to add shea butter for my super fat. So you can control exactly what fat is left or what oil is left in your soap with hot process, which is a nice thing. That I think is one of the main wow factors about hot process soap over cold process soap. Okay, next up in line is your working time. With cold process soap, obviously you can just bring stuff to a medium trace or even a thin trace. You have much more artistic movability or maneuverability in cold process soap, because you can work at a much thinner trace. With hot process, there's obviously you're going to go through the thin trace, thick trace, thin, medium, thick trace, and you're going to saponify your soap. And afterwards, you can actually try to play around with it. So with cold process soap, you can do all those little nice wispy swirls, and you've got lots of artistic maneuverability. With hot process soap, it's basically a plop and drop. I call it a plop and drop because depends on how much fluid or how much moisture there is still left in your oil. It can become really thick. It can cool down very quickly and really thicken a lot. So many times you can do 2 colors, but it's much more rustic in appearance. So there are stuff that you can add to your hot process soap to make it a little bit more fluid. I've tried yogurt before. Yogurt actually is some kind of miracle thing in hot process soap. For some reason it makes it much more fluid. Just 1 tablespoonful of yogurt in a 1 kilogram batch of soap really makes a huge difference. Then you can add sodium lactate as well. Some people add a little bit of glycerin that they stir into it just before they put it in the mold. So there are some stuff that you can do. There are some way that you can play about a little bit with colors and so on with your hot process soap, but you are much more limited. Cold process, you can decide if you want a slow trace, at what trace you want to do your swirls. Yeah, there are so many things that you can do with cold process artistically that you can't do with hot process. Okay, then another thing, fragrance oils. Cold process soap, you need to use well-behaving fragrance oils. If you are using a fast mover or something that dries, it can mess up your whole batch of soap completely. The upside is with cold process soap, there's not much heat. So if there's a very low flush point on your fragrance oils, then it's not going to evaporate as easily or quickly as with hot process soap. Hot process soap, on the other hand, because you are saponifying everything and then adding your fragrance oil at the last moment, you can use your risers, your scissors, all that stuff that behaves really bad. As long as it's skin safe, you can use it in your soap then. As I said, the downside is that you are working with a much higher heat, so you are going to be very careful, otherwise some of your fragrance are going to evaporate out of your soap, and it's not going to, your fragrance that's going to stay in your soap is much less, and it might be a much softer fragrance that's going to end up in your soap. So be careful, because you can't only cool it down so much before it thickens. So that's the only downside on the hot process, is some of your fragrance might evaporate during the thing, and you might need to add a little bit more. Then the very last thing with our soap making is the cleaning up afterwards. Now with cold process soap making, what I usually do is I will take, I've cut up a old towel, so I've got all of these rags that is just reserved for soap making. Then as I go, when I stir and I need to clean a spoon, I just immediately wipe it off and put it aside. And then at the end of the thing, when everything is wiped clean, those rags go into a basket and it will stay there for a week or two, and then at some stage I will just throw them in my washing machine and I will wash them, because then all the soap batter in the rags became soap, so it's easy to wash it out. And with all my equipment, I just rinse it off with nice warm soapy water and rinse it and it's clean, easy peasy. Hot process soap, many people prefer to clean hot process soap, but for me that is, you need to scrape some soap remains out of your stuff. The stuff that you need to soak it. Then if you soak soap, it becomes snotty and disgusting. I don't like cleaning hot process soap stuff. But yeah, it's safe on your skin. It's not gonna, there's, as I say, there's pros and cons to both of them. I prefer cleaning cold process soap. For me, I just wipe everything off with old rags, let the rags saponify on their own and just wash my stuff. And with hot process soap, for me, I just don't like soap that's been soaked. It's just really disgusting. But yeah, it depends on if you can really scrape your pots clean, then maybe you don't need to soak stuff. But for me, there's always stuff that gets left behind. I just don't like it. So yeah, and that is all the things between hot process and cold process. The pros and the cons, as I said, there are many things in between that you can do as well. There are no right and wrong ways. This is just personal choice. So I hope you've learned something and that you can use this information. So I will see you guys again next time. So be blessed, stay safe, and yeah, see you again.